Hi, my name is Eva Steiner, and this is my project Psychotherapists Around the Globe. I am interviewing the psychotherapists around the world and asking them the same 8 questions. I am wondering how mental health profession is in their country. Today we are going to. So, Manya, thank you for doing this interview with me. Before we start, can you introduce yourself?
So, hi, Eva. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I'm really looking forward to doing this. So, my name is Manya. I'm a counseling psychologist. I currently am practicing privately, and I am based in Mangalore, Karnataka, which is a state in India. I have been working for almost 3 years now, and I love my job. Uh, I get to meet a lot of beautiful people, a lot of interesting people. And so, yeah, my work keeps me going, and that's about it.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your culture. What is some holiday or tradition that your country celebrates? And if your culture would be an emotion, what emotion would it be?
So, if you look at India, India is a diverse culture. It is just not, one particular culture that exists because all across the country, um, from north to south, east to west, it's a lot of differences that are there. There's a lot of, I mean, like for example, if you're even staying in an apartment in your own building, there will be people of different cultures because right now people are traveling everywhere. It's not just restricted to one area and one specific population. You mix with a lot of different people, a lot of new people. So I would say if I had to describe anything about India, it's acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Acceptance in, you know knowing and living with people who are different from you, because communities are different, religions are different, cultures are different. And I think it is all about living together in harmony and being more accepting. I think that's what, to me, if I had to describe India as its culture, that's what I would describe it as. So it's very difficult if you have to ask me, like, one holiday that the whole country celebrates, because there are so many cultures, so many traditions that, each specific community has their own specific way of celebrating. Uh, that being said, every community would partake in the other community's holidays as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just one specific. So even when we are in school, even when we are in offices, at our places of work, wherever it is, when they give holidays for any festival or for anything like that, it's always given to the whole company. It is not that, okay, if you are, for example, a Christian, it's okay. So only Christians get Christmas off. Or, for example, if you are a Hindu, Hinduism is one of the major religions here in India, and a lot of Hindus celebrate Diwali.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's just not only Hindus who get off there, it's everyone who gets off. So because of that, everyone celebrates it. It's like you don't have to belong to a specific culture or a specific community to, celebrate a particular festival or anything like that. Of course, we do have our own days in terms of like the Independence Day of India, when we got freedom from the British in 1947. That is, even though it's given as a holiday, we do have, children go to school. A lot of places, offices also, they hoist the national flag, and it has its own significance because, we honor all those who fought for us to get our freedom and our independence. So basically, India is a mix of different cultures, different traditions, and I think that's what makes it really, really special.
And everybody celebrates together, huh?
Yeah, everyone does celebrate together because, I think it's the different coming together of people from different backgrounds.
Yeah, I think it's
Because if I
beautiful.
am celebrating, yes, because if I am celebrating Christmas, I would invite all my friends, even if they're Christians, non-Christians, come over, let's have something, let's celebrate it together. If I have friends who are celebrating Diwali, or if I have friends who are celebrating Eid, we would still go to their house maybe, or get together and do things, celebrate, do different types of things. So, like for example, when I grew up, um, Diwali was a holiday I really looked forward to because we would get a lot of sweets, a lot of desserts, and a lot of Indian sweets. Oh my God, it is amazing. And I would not celebrate it per se in my house, but I would just go with all the neighborhood kids. We would just go up and in my apartment building, distributing sweets to everyone, waiting to see who all are sending sweets home, and then just start eating and writing on people's. So for Diwali, they would give these boxes, like you give sweets to your neighbors and you would write Happy Diwali on it. So, it's all the kids sitting and writing on those boxes, Happy Diwali to you and your family. And, it was a very joyous occasion. And for Diwali, they light these lamps called diyas. So even I would light it. I would light it outside my house. They have something called rangoli, which is made of colored powder. I'm not very sure of the significance of it, but even I would do it. Like outside my house, I would draw rangoli or make these designs. So I think it's all about that. That's what India is. It's
And what do
unity in
you
diversity.
and what do you celebrate for Diwali?
So Diwali is a Hindu festival. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very familiar with its significance, but it is essentially the winning of good over evil.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the basic concept of Diwali. And while Diwali is there, then also Christians do celebrate Christmas. We have Jains who have their own, which is another religious sect. They have their own specific festivals. People who follow Islam have Eid and they have their own specific festivals. So everyone, it's a whole variety of festivals. And
Yeah.
it's like different places have different festivals at different times of the year. So I think that is the beauty of India. That's when when you asked me that question, that's what came to my mind.
Mm-hmm. And the emotion?
I would say it is the sense of being accepted, feeling like you belong, even though everyone around you may not be the same as you are. There's never a sense of feeling left out. You
Mm-hmm.
always feel like you are part of something that is a really strong power. Like that's what, as I said before, like unity in diversity. You feel that, you feel the coming together with people around you. So that is how I would express an emotion as well.
Mm-hmm. And how did you become a psychotherapist in your country, and what is your therapeutic approach?
So in India, um, psychology as a field itself, psychotherapy as a field itself, mental health for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
is still in its very early stages. What I mean by still it's in its very early stages is that it's still up and coming. People are now realizing more the importance and the significance that should be given to mental health. Um, I think that the pandemic has been a major, major impact factor, if I can say, in that process, because during the pandemic is when people also started to acknowledge the fact that things were not going in the best way
Mm-hmm.
possible,
Yeah.
because because of the lockdowns, because of being in confined spaces, people were not able to manage a lot of things on their own. And that's probably when it started. People realized that I need more help. Like this, I'm not feeling this way. I mean, I'm not supposed to feel this way. Sorry. And I think it gave it sort of like a push, so that people started seeking help. Online therapy as well started. The boom started during the pandemic. Now a lot of therapists, including me, we practice online. So coming to how do you become a psychotherapist or how do you become a psychologist? In India, the term is used interchangeably with both psychologists
Mm-hmm.
and psychotherapists. There is not much of a differentiation. I mean, there are still, it's still very unclear because our guidelines, which I will talk about, is not very rigid, is not very firm. So even people are very unsure that, do I call myself a counselor? Do I call myself a psychologist? Do I call myself a psychotherapist? Generally, though, from what I have understood, a psychotherapist is someone who does more intense work, who does more, long-term work with a client. They would refer themselves as a psychotherapist, but I could be wrong. This is the
Mm-hmm.
information that I have. So, in India, to call yourself a psychologist, we you have to complete your post graduation in psychology. So, at least if you complete your post graduation, is when you are called a psychologist, and you can start practicing as a psychologist.
So you mean like
Now,
a
if you
master, or what do you mean by
yes,
post?
a master, a master.
Mm-hmm.
So you finish your master's, and that's when you can call yourself a psychologist and you can start practicing. Now, there is a specialization beyond that, which is called a clinical psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if someone is a clinical psychologist, they do an additional 2 years after their master's. They do something called an MPhil, which is a master's in philosophy. So they do an MPhil in clinical psychology. So, and almost you have to be associated, like the university in which you're doing your program has to have something called an RCI accreditation. RCI stands for the Rehabilitation Council of India. So
Mm-hmm.
your course should be accredited with RCI. And that is when you finish that. So you finish your master's in psychology, you do your MPhil in clinical psychology, and then you are called a clinical psychologist and you have like a licensing number and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the significance of a clinical psychologist is that they are the only ones who can, give you like assessments, like give you proper reports, give you proper test reports, whether anything, be it your developmental disorders, anything, whether it's anything beyond that, whether whatever reports I mean, anyone can create a report, but if the report has to have any validity, if it has to, if I have a learning disability and I need my school or my school board to give me some provisions, I cannot just bring a report from any psychologist. It has to be a clinical psychologist and their RCI number has to be mentioned. That is when
Mm-hmm.
the accommodations are made for me. So a clinical psychologist is someone who has, who is able to do that, who has the ability to do that. That is just one aspect of being a clinical psychologist. But clinical psychologists also are people who work more along the spectrum of disorders, be it any disorder, maybe if it's the personality disorders, if it's the mood disorders, the more intense disorders is what a clinical psychologist would also do. So this is this is generally, if you're an ethical psychologist, this is what you would follow. The problem comes in when we do not have any governing body to whom we can essentially complain, or I mean file a complaint in case something is going wrong. So there's nobody. For example, I'm a counseling psychologist, but in India, to practice as a psychologist or a counseling psychologist, I don't have a licensing number.
Mm-hmm.
I have proof that I have finished my master's, and that's about it.
So if you are
But
not a clinical psychologist, you don't have this number.
no, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not
Mm-hmm.
the clinical psychologist, we don't have this.
Okay.
So it would give me more credibility if I had also a licensing number, because then I'm also accountable to someone. So even if I do something that is maybe unethical or illegal, if anyone wants to take an action, they can take an action. Right now, because the field is very unregulated, like anyone can call themselves a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that has been happening especially since the pandemic. So because of social media, because of people, the rise of influencers offering therapy services, they would, if you just have a large following on any social media platform, be it Instagram or Twitter or anywhere, YouTube, anything, they would reach out to their followers and say things like, I know a lot of y'all are having um, some difficulties. So I'm opening up some part of my day where I will listen to you, and you can pay me a certain amount. And I have seen those posts myself.
Mm.
And these are people who have no background in psychology. These are people who are not qualified at all. And we know that how harmful it can be to a client if We allow them to express it freely without it being a safe environment. If we don't have the skills to, regulate what the client is going through, maybe those people are coming from a good intention. Maybe, they are coming with it, okay, there are a lot of people who need help, so let me do something. But it is in fact doing more harm than good. And of course, there are people who are just looking at a quick way to make some money,
Yeah.
and, make people like be, trick people who are vulnerable. And the problem that people like, therapists, psychologists, psychotherapists, whoever, like what they are facing is this aspect that we are struggling to, counter whatever these people are doing, because it's so unregulated. Like, even if I find someone, person A, I know this person is not a psychologist, but they are calling themselves a psychologist and they are just offering services. I don't have anyone whom I can complain to. Like, who do I complain to saying that this is illegal? So
Yeah.
these are all things that are very difficult. There is um and there's a bill that is being currently, that's in the talks, where the mental health, something along the lines of, I can't remember the exact name right now, but where they're trying to regulate this, but that's still in the process. It's not been passed yet. So hopefully, if something like that is passed, we will at least have some specific provisions given to us where we can file a complaint at least, or
Yeah.
do something about.
Mm.
So this also stems from the fact that the common man doesn't have enough knowledge to know whether, how do I know whether this person is an actual psychologist or not?
Yeah.
Like, like, for example, it's if it's a doctor, like, some a physical ailment, if you have, I know that a doctor in my country, in India, they should at least have a degree called an MBBS. And then only MBBS is just one degree out of the many other degrees, but at least an MBBS is something. If I know my doctor has an MBBS, okay, they are qualified as a doctor. But the similar things when it comes to mental health or when it comes to mental illness, it doesn't exist because people do not know what is it that I look for.
Yeah.
Like, how do, if I'm reaching out to a person, how do I know? So I think that is what, and that's what people are trying to highlight, that whenever you're going for therapy, ask your therapist what are their qualifications, how many years have they been working, what is the population that they do, is it something, if your concerns are something that they are familiar with. So so that's how it is, and it's a long way forward, but I think we should get there.
One more question. What about before the master? Do you need to do a psychology bachelor as well, or you can do any study and then you can go directly to psychology master?
So it depends on the university that you're applying to. So for a lot of places, they do take in to a master's program even without you having like a degree in psychology. Without doing your graduation, you can do your graduation in another subject, and you can come in to do your master's in psychology. Now, there are different aspects. It's not just masters in psychology. You have masters in that also. You have different types of masters. You have masters in counseling psychology. You have masters in psycho-oncology, which is, working specifically with cancer patients. You have masters in education psychology, which is again school related. You have masters in organization psychology, which is, related to organizations, and industrial psychology. So there are different aspects of everything. So each course may have a different criteria. Not all courses have the same criteria. Um, some courses, like, if you so you can also do a master's in clinical psychology, but that still doesn't make you a clinical psychologist. You still have to do an MPhil after that. But most colleges, at least what I've come across, you can't do a master's in clinical psychology specifically without having a degree in psychology. For a clinical psychologist, clinical psychology degree, you would still need to have a bachelor's, or have a degree in psychology. Then you do your clinical psychology. But still, even if you finish your master's in clinical psychology, you're still not a clinical psychologist. You still need to do an MPhil, and only after an MPhil is when you can call yourself a clinical psychologist with a proper licensing number.
And you cannot go directly to this MPhil from the bachelor degree?
No, you can't.
Mm-hmm. You need a master and then this.
You don't need a master's.
Mm-hmm.
You need a master's that has been done for 2 years. So a lot of psychologists, what they do is they go and do their master's abroad, like maybe I think in the UK or somewhere. But if I'm not wrong, in the UK the master's is just for 1 year. And if it's just a 1 year master's, that is not valid for you to come back to India and do your MPhil. You need to have a 2 year master.
Okay, and how society looks upon psychotherapy or any psychological help?
So I think it is, compared to before, it has gotten better, but still we have a long way to go in terms of acceptance, in terms of accepting that mental health is something that is still, that is very real. That is something that is, you know, still a huge and major work in progress. Um, because it's not seen, it's not something that is visible, right?
Yeah.
People struggle with so many things, and it's not something that's very visible. And if it's a physical ailment, if I have broken my leg, if I have a fever, you can see that I'm sick. And then that is a very valid reason for me to maybe not go to school, not study, not go to work, etc. But if I have a mental illness, or if I am just, even, it doesn't even have to be a mental illness. If I'm just having a bad day because maybe I've just been anxious, it's not something that's visible, and it's not something that's given a lot of importance to. um, Society, I mean, it is getting better, definitely. I can also see the difference between when I was in school versus how things are in school right now. Children, are being taught a lot more about emotion, a lot more about relationships, understanding things. um, there it is up and coming, but we still have a long way to go in that. So I mean, there are many clients who say that I can't let my family know that I'm coming for therapy, because if families would not accept it,
Mm-hmm.
the families would frown upon it, or just be that, why do you need therapy? It's not something. I mean, we all have gone through struggles. We all did it on our own. We all managed through things on our own. What is special about you that you need help?
Mm-hmm. And what is some
Also,
stigma or beliefs regarding the therapy or psychological help?
one, that it doesn't exist, that there
Mm-hmm.
is mental illness may not exist. Like, um, if we speak about depression, it's just disregarded, as it's all in your head. You just have to think positive.
So
And
it's
we know
really
that
deep.
depression is much more than, yeah, yes, it's much. And I'm not saying that this is across everywhere, but it's
Yeah.
still a very major chunk of the population or the society that believes in it. And there's also a tendency that, why do you need to go and speak about our private problems or our private things with other people? Somebody else should not know. A third person doesn't have to know this.
Yeah. Mm.
We should try and solve our problems within ourselves. There is also a tendency to turn to other types of treatment, maybe in terms of religious leaders, um, being one example, that maybe, trying to,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it can help. I think with India, that is something that is important, that therapists have to accept that maybe, you know, our culture is so different that, and we still have so much to go in terms of mental health, that there are still going to be people who reach out to many other people before they ever come to a therapist. Maybe if I pray, this is going to go away. Maybe if I speak to a priest, this is going to go away. Maybe if I speak to someone who has a very high value, or who's being held very in a very high esteem in society, they would tell me what to do. And that is
Mm.
something that therapists have to learn to work with. That we
Yeah.
understand that sometimes a client may come to us as a last resort. Like, I have tried everything else, now I'm coming to you. It's also things, like how what you are taught, from a young age onwards, that are you encouraged to speak about your problem, or are you encouraged to suppress them? Are you encouraged to express your emotions, or are you told that you should not cry or you should not get angry?
Mm.
Something that I've seen, a pattern that I have seen with my clients, if it's a male client, they have been encouraged to not cry. Whereas if it's a female client, they have been encouraged to not get angry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is
Yeah.
something that I have noticed that, and so because of that, both males and females then have the tendency to, one has the tendency to suppress any, feeling of discomfort in terms of sadness, whereas the other one just starts doubting herself that I'm not supposed to feel angry here. I should, I should be okay with it. I should not have this response.
Yeah.
So, and that also is very difficult because, then, and this is all being taught. We learn this as children, right? Where is it coming from? This is a pattern that is there in society.
Mm.
And I think that is also very important because it plays a major factor when they come in for therapy.
Yeah. Okay. What is your society teaching about child-parent relationship, and whether these values of society also affect how the therapists design the interventions?
So, India is a very collectivist society. As in,
Mm-hmm.
it's from a very young age, we are taught to think about others before we think about ourselves. We are, of course, encouraged to respect our elders, even if it does us harm.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I mean by that is, if I have an adult in my life who is making a mistake, I am taught somewhere that I should not question it. Your only duty is to obey or respect the elder. Because if you ask a question, it's known as, why are you back answering?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you asking these questions? This is not something that a child should do. So we are encouraged to keep quiet. And this is very problematic because in cases of abuse, in cases of child sexual abuse and rape, one, we don't feel safe to speak about it, or we don't even know how to speak about it. And two, when we speak about it, a lot of times people don't believe us because no, that person is a very respected person in this family. They would never do it. It's a major challenge. And when that child grows up with the trauma of having been abused, when they do come into therapy sessions or anything, and eventually, if through the course of their life they decide that maybe they want to cut ties with that person, and this is what I'm speaking currently is an example of abuse, but this can be for anything. If I have a parent who has been very emotionally unstable, if I have a parent who has been abusive towards me, if I have a parent who has not been there for me, or if I have a parent who is making it very difficult for me to live, by default the society would say that they are your parents, you should not cut ties with them. And I'm speaking here only from the society's point of view. I'll come to the therapist's point, what a
Yeah.
therapist says. By society, because of our culture, we are encouraged to, give them that respect or
Mm.
obey what they say. Or, we are not very directly encouraged to cut ties. No, it's okay. You should just, they are older than you. It's okay. Even if they make a mistake, we have, as a child, we're expected to forgive and forget. Yeah. So now if a client comes to therapy and through the course of their journey they decide that maybe the best thing for them to do in order to move forward is to maybe cut ties with this person, not involve this person in their life, as a therapist, because we have to be neutral, right? You have to do neutral. What I mean by neutral is I can't let my personal opinions come into my session.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I believe that no, you should give your mother a chance, you should give your sister a chance, your father a chance, etc. But if the therapist is an ethical, and if they are being professional in their job, they would encourage the client to do what is best for them. I mean, I have heard of cases where, you know, clients have told me that, in cases where they have brought up, maybe not even cutting ties with parents, but where they've spoken about how they have felt when their parents treated them a particular way, there have been cases of therapists passing judgments there, or passing comments saying that how can you speak about your parents like this is not something they have given you so much in your life. And of course the client would not return to that
Yeah.
therapist again for a next session.
Mm.
But I so that is there. I'm not going to say that that is not there, but I'm not sure is that only because of how we place our parents in the Indian society, or whether this can happen across, I think, all cultures and different societies as well. Because parents are seen as people who are sacrificing, who are giving everything to their child. So I think that is a sentiment that is echoed across all societies and different cultures. As long as the therapist is ethical and the therapist is being professional, they shouldn't, ideally, they shouldn't be telling the client that, no, you can't do this. You should be
Mm.
encouraging your client to do, you encourage and you help them see what is best for them. And if that is, they have the choice, right? We are not there to make a choice for them. We are just empowering them so that they know what to do that is best for them. And if that is what they want to do, if cutting ties with an adult or an elder is something that they want to do, I think as long as the therapist knows what is happening and knows their boundaries, knows their professional boundaries, they would encourage the client to do it.
Mm. Okay, the fifth question. What are the learned beliefs regarding client-therapist relationship? And can the relationship continue outside the therapy once the therapy process is over?
We often have to explain boundaries to clients
Mm-hmm.
as a therapist, in the sense that one is, session boundaries. Like, these are my session timings. I am available from so and so time. You can message me in order if you want to you want to book a session or whatever it is. But and because the whole concept of therapy is not very familiar, people do not know, like, um, am I, is it okay for me to call my therapist at any point in time? Or, can I just drop a message to my therapist at any point in time? If I'm going through something, can I just, type out a whole message to my therapist? So those are boundaries that we communicate to clients as and when required. And clients do stick to those boundaries. Clients do that. Um, in terms of a relationship outside the session, so of course, any ethical therapist would never encourage that. You cannot, because we know that that's unethical. But coming back to the same point of the lack of a licensing body, the lack of a governing body. If I know someone who's doing this, I don't have any means to even do anything about it. Of course, then rather than speak to the therapist, say that this is not okay, my hands are tied. I don't have a lot of things that I can do. So it's not encouraged at all in the community. If you speak, when we have peer supervision, peer supervisions where you have supervision with your therapists of the same experience level, maybe just coming together and discussing cases and knowing how to best way to move forward. When we do speak about all these things, we speak about how it's important to uphold these basic ethics, the guidelines that do exist. No, and I think it again depends on how each therapist is, right? Are they
Mm-hmm.
ethical enough? Are they professional enough? And as yes, when the relationship ends, also no,
Mm-hmm.
um, we are not encouraged to have any other relationship with a client, because the therapist is always, I mean, even though we do not want a power difference to be there, we know that we are at a higher power in terms of the client. What I mean by that is, because we know a lot of very intricate and intimate details about the client, which they may not have shared with anyone else. For example, just putting it into another context, if we look at a boss and a subordinate in a workplace, we would know that relationships are not encouraged between these two because of the power difference, because we know that there is a difference in the power dynamics there. Similarly, in a therapy relationship also, we are trying to remain neutral, we are trying to maintain same level of power, but at the end of the day, I know a lot more about my client than my client knows about me.
Yeah.
And that difference is going to be there because my client is being really vulnerable in front of me. Even after the therapy relationship ends, it still could be considered exploitative in nature, that you are using, like, if you are approaching your client, or if your client is approaching you for any relationship. I'm not even talking about a romantic relationship. It can be a friendship, it can be anything. It would cause major duality of relationships, and that can be very problematic, so that is not
Yeah.
encouraged.
And in clinical psychologist cases, do they have a board where client can report to or not?
No,
Mm-hmm.
it's still, as far as I know, that it's not something where the provision is given. Like, I don't think there is. I was recently also, I was reading about it, that, it's not there. Look, I mean, I think, I'm not sure whether it's present, and even if it is present, nobody is going to take action.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I know, no. As far as I know, such a provision does not exist in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't have anyone to complain to. I mean, you can call out the person on LinkedIn saying that so and so did this, I know this, but that's all that can be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. Okay. Is supervision a must for the therapist in your country?
There is again no licensing body to tell you that it is a must, but
Yeah.
it purely depends on your, I mean, I go for supervision, like, because that I'm just 3 years into my practice. I know that there are so many things I do not know. Even if it's not about a case, it's about my own transference, counter transference issues that could be there.
Yeah.
So it's encouraged that every therapist goes for therapy themselves, as well as goes for supervision also. And that's something that I am trying to do. Like, I go for therapy myself, I go for supervision as well. And I also go for peer supervision with my classmates from my post graduation, where we meet every 2 weeks and we discuss cases, help each other through different aspects, professional aspects. And yeah, and I also, and I know that most of those people are also going for therapy themselves and seeking supervision as well. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you only have yourself to be accountable to. You
Yeah.
only have, and you have your clients to be accountable to, right? Like, your clients should not be impacted by what you are doing or what you are not doing. Just because you are not seeking therapy, or just because you're not seeking supervision, I think it's important to recognize that it's not only you who's getting impacted, but your clients are. And I think
Yeah.
that's very, very important to keep in mind, because you already have a person who is, being vulnerable in front of you. We should not be adding more difficult things to their life. And it's very
Mm.
important. I think that's something that, so, but unfortunately, we don't have anyone to keep it in check except for
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. What are the most common complaints that a client comes to therapy for?
So I think this question would be completely based on the kind of population that you deal with,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, if you're going to work with a school population, you would know the concerns are very much different. Teenagers have a very different set of concerns as compared to maybe young adults or older adults or geriatric population, things like that. So I will just speak from my experience, because I work mostly with the age group of around 18 to around 40, 45. Um, a lot of concerns that I work mainly with are relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, um, a lot of, I do a lot of grief and loss as well. Do a lot of work with grief and loss, so death, and even breakups, uh, transitions, moving from one place to another. Um, those are all the most common things that I work with. But if you just ask me for one thing, I would say relationships, because
Mm-hmm.
especially with this age group, because they are, many of them are moving out of their home, moving maybe to different parts of the country or even abroad, trying to manage, relationships that way, because when you move, when you move outside your house, you get that sense of independence. You are able to do things by yourself. And sometimes when you have to come back home, it gets very difficult. This is just one aspect of it. Of course,
Yeah.
there are other aspects of people, living outside and having to manage family relationships from there as well. So
Mm.
it's mostly a lot of this. I would majorly say relationships, because especially with this age group, relationships, marriage concerns, going to get married, just got married, adjusting to a new life. Those are all the types of things that I work with, or I think is most common.
Yeah. If you would share one tool, belief, or approach that is a must-have for you as a therapist, what would that be?
I think for me, it's, as a therapist, to always remember that no one knows my client as much as my client themselves know about, them. Like, it's
Mm.
important to remember that the client is the one who knows everything that is happening in their life. I am just there as a facilitator. I can give them my professional opinion, or my professional point of view to help them see things, but they are the ones, they are the masters, or they are the ones who are there in their life. And it's important to know that each to rather than not know, it's important to remember that each client is different. And just because they may have checked off some marks for a particular diagnosis, or you just notice something that is there, we shouldn't lose them in that part. Like, okay, this is the person who has anxiety, so this is how they're going to behave every time, or this is what they always do. No, but it's important to dig further, understand where this could be coming from. And I think that is something that you always have to remember as a therapist, that don't try to fit all your clients into one particular box. Just remember that each of them have their own box where they are the ones who know what is best. That's something that I'm
Yeah.
always telling myself.
Mm. Thank you for doing this interview with me. For me, it was really beautiful to hear about this acceptance in your culture.
And I'm so glad. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was really fun speaking to you about everything. It was a nice journey for me to reflect on everything as well.
Yeah. Are you a psychotherapist and want to be a part of my project? Feel free to contact me through my webpage. Thank you for listening.